Edwin, I want to bring you in for this last topic because I know when we specifically put this show together, this was one of the biggest pieces we wanted to hit. This idea that when you are, as an organization, thinking about all of the pieces that bring together the product that you're pushing to market, what are those critical vendor relationships, whether it's on the cloud side, whether it's a specific software vendor, that assemble that supply chain together? And side of things, this was really the most important topic that I think we wanted to address because I think it's one that there's a lot of word soup in there, right? Third party, risk. We all talk about risk when it comes to backup, but this is really specifically talking about your relationships with vendors and what kind of responsibility those vendors have to uphold their end of the bargain. So, Edwin, talk to us a little bit about this topic and then also maybe how Veeam's approaching it.
Yeah, if you look at the financial institutions, they are all completely digitized now, but they're not alone in the whole supply chain. So we all are shackled in the whole chain, right? So what I normally also say to our customers is like, if you're doing that third-party risk management, you look over your left shoulder, you look over your right shoulder, and you look who your parties you're dealing with at that moment in time. Look them in the eye and think, are they cyber secure? What do you think? And that's where third-party risk management comes in, because you really can't believe someone on the blue eyes that, yeah, we are really secure. Yeah, that's nice, but you have to do a risk assessment. And that's also what I normally do in operating business. It's about risk relevance and return on investment. So by making sure that you know how big the risk is, the relevance, I think, is already out in the open. That's also why the law and the legal stuff is being bombarded on partners. And then it's about, okay, how can you get a return on investment? Because if you make sure that that whole supply chain is secure, makes it a lot easier for yourself as a shackle in that supply chain to also be secure, but also be compliant. And if you look around, most likely anyone in that supply chain, there's all those shackles, will have the same obligations for DORA, for instance. So making sure that you do risk assessment, contractual obligations, security standards, but also, and that's, I think, the most important part, especially also for Veeam, resiliency requirements. Because if you look at Veeam, data resilience is like the foundation of operational resilience. And if you look at DORA, what are the two middle letters? An O and an R, operational resilience. That's where we shine, and we can make sure that by getting your data resilient, that you have that strong foundation to pursue the rest of DORA.
Absolutely, right? That idea that really thinking about who your vendors are, doing that risk assessment, figuring out the process, but then also looking into the documentation that those vendors produce. And Edwin, I know part of the reason we wanted Courtney on the show, we'll make sure she comes back on another episode. One of the big outputs from her team on the governance, risk, and compliance side has been, again, making sure that Veeam is enabling customers to understand how we're holding up our end of the bargain. So I know we have published something called the Veeam Trust Center, and that is where you can learn more about how Veeam is approaching our organizational and system resilience. And we'll make sure on the production side that we post a link to the Trust Center along with some other resources in the chat so you all can see as members of the Veeam community how we're approaching this. And we hope that's a good best practice for how you can go look at vendors' own publications, right? And really think about who those most important vendors are. What would a cloud provider do, for example? What would a software vendor do? And if you think that this is just kind of an insurance policy, it's not. Because Edwin, I know when we talked about this, we talked about some very specific examples, including big news-making ones. So, organizations like American Express, they had a downtime event, and the reason for that was one of their third-party vendors in their supply chain. So, Edwin, do you want to talk a bit about how, again, some organizations are looking at this and any specific examples, anonymous or otherwise, that you might want to chat about?
Yeah, you already touched on Courtney and her team in the global information security team. As Veeam, we spend millions that is not known out in the open, but just to protect Veeam and protect the product, to make sure that our shackle, the Veeam shackle in the whole supply chain, is secure and that people have trust and confidence in that one. because it's like behind the shield, how Veeam security approaches risk and security management in that part. And that's also why we have the whole trust center. And if you see all those compliancy, ISO certification, anything we touch on, also what Jeff talked about, the Navy, we do that not just to have a logo on there. No, we want to make sure that anyone out there that's using our products have confidence in, hey, we're using a product that's safe. The product is being tested, safety, but also the organization Veeam behind it is also being tested and also up to the standards of being compliant and also fitting into the whole legislation and compliance that's currently out there.
Awesome. Well, Edwin, thank you so much for breaking apart this topic. And hopefully you all have had a good picture of how we can focus on what we know when it comes to regulatory compliance changes in 2025. I know there's a lot of swirl and a lot of confusion and a lot of anxiety and questions.